The Chiefs had a rough time getting to the passer in 2025, but they have to think about this. It's possible they trade Chris Jones.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This is Locked On Chiefs, your only daily podcast for the Kansas City Chiefs here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network out there. We appreciate you everydayers for being here. That's how we got to this position. We can't say thank you enough, but we try. So we came up with something called Everydayer Club, where you can actually sign up and get audio without ads and a number of other benefits. Check that out at Everydayer Club and check out another Locked On show for your next listen. We're going to have a good time today. We have plenty to go over. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. NFL33.com, where I look at the whole league with my staff, and RGR Football, where we go even that much further on the Chiefs in a 360 kind of view. But it all starts here on Locked On Chiefs with my partner, Chris Clark. Over at KC Chiefs Corner is his writing. You can find him there. We've been doing this for a very long time, approaching a decade here, folks. We very much appreciate you, and thank you for being with us. We'll have more on the Everydayer Club later, but it comes down to this. Every franchise hits a point where they have to consider some things that you would think are otherworldly. The Patriots got to this point. We've seen other long-term successful teams have to do away with successful players. We've seen recently even some successful coaches have to go. So it comes down to three aspects of this question is, would they consider trading Chris Jones? That'll be first. Then we come back and who could they be interested enough to talk to about trading for Chris Jones? And then what are the things that could get in the way? What does it do?
Now, hold on. Let me get this straight. You're telling me that there's a potential to have a Chiefs 2026 season starting in September without Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, or Chris Jones?
When you say it like that, I just kind of need to run away, but it is a possibility. This is something that the Chiefs need to consider, and I'm sure that they are. I don't necessarily think that it's likely. I personally am not a huge proponent of it, but it bears the conversation about what would it have to look like, because this is a situation other franchises have been in. They've gotten to the point where, even as we saw just a kind of a hint of with the Tyreek Hill trade of a couple of years ago, then L'Jarius Sneed, when you get to the point where you have players that are earning so much that it's difficult for them to continue to put out on the field a product that kind of lives up to that, and you're getting further and further behind the cap curve, it leads you into this position where value to you might be in what you can then replace someone with in terms of a number of draft picks, free agents, etc. Because you get both draft capital, which gives you very, very cheap labor at multiple positions, and you get cap relief so that you can spend a little bit in free agency to replace that player that is, in this case, a cornerstone. There's a lot of hurdles there too. We're going to talk about some of them coming up, but the cap is probably the biggest one that we have to see is, would they even consider it given the cap situation?
I will say this. If you want to compare Kansas City to the past dynasty that was before Kansas City, that would be the New England Patriots. Who did the New England Patriots let go at their heyday?
Who didn't?
Vince Wilfork.
Yep. Yeah, that's one.
I mean, and you said really the correct answer. Wilfork was just the guy I thought of because of who we're talking about here, but it's who didn't they let go of? Like, the reality is if you want to have a dynasty, if you want to compete year in and year out, like the Patriots did, you can't get to a point where you allow yourself to get hamstrung with players that aren't really fitting your scheme or fitting for what you're paying them production wise. And that's really what your argument would be for trading Chris Jones right now, is he doesn't fit the production of what they're going to be paying him in 2026. He definitely didn't fit it in 2025. And there are some people that are saying that he took some plays off. I think that there's an argument to be made there at different times. But man, you look at his 2025 cap number, it was only $23.6 million. In 2026, it's just basically $45 million is his cap number in 2026. That is the reason you're having this conversation.
I agree completely. And again, I am not someone, I'm usually loyal to the player side longer than I am to the franchise's side. But I do want to point this out. This is what it comes down to if you're trying to read this performance and availability, and I do think availability is part of it as well, tab here. Since 2022, Chris Jones's total snaps and pass rush snaps has declined every season. Chris Jones's pressure rate and total pressures have declined every season. This last one was a pretty significant drop, nearly 25% less than he was able to produce in 2024. 88 pressures in 24, 63 in 25. That is a significant thing. And we know that he's got an age, he's 31 and a half now. By the time the season rolls around, he will be 32 years old. And yet he still has value. He's still able, when at his best, to accelerate and explode off the ball and get to the pass rusher. He was the Chiefs pass rusher this entire season. But it doesn't mean that he can continue to do that year after year after year. We may have seen the peak of Chris Jones's career. Maybe it may be time to let someone else ride out his abilities to be a pass rusher for them and not for the Chiefs.
Yeah, you look at his stats the last 4 seasons, you look at what he produced, and they paid him for the player that he was going into the contract. Now he's been paid. He's not getting the pay. He's not getting the play, or he's not giving them the play that they would expect for the contract. To be also fair to him, part of it is also on the Chiefs because they have reworked his deal and moved money forward to now where they have this situation where he's at basically $45 million. It's not sustainable. You cannot have a defensive tackle making that kind of money in the NFL, period. I don't know. By far, he is, he's the highest paid defensive interior defensive lineman in the NFL by over $5 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much he is over. I'm curious to see if you look at 2026, his cap number is 45. The next closest one is Nnamdi Madubuike for the Ravens at just under 31. So 14 million more cap space than than anybody else in the NFL. So can you have him play under a $30 million number? I still don't think that that's something that the Chiefs want to do, which gets you to the point of the question of, do they trade him? And this goes back to kind of where I started this whole show with comparing it to the Patriots. I hate that we have to go back there, but that's the reality of where this team is. And you look at what the Patriots did for so long. They won 3 Super Bowls, and then they had several seasons that they were off, and then they went back and they won another 3 Super Bowls. Kansas City, they've won 3. They've been in 5. Can they get back to the Super Bowl in 2026? Possibly. It's going to be a long road. They have a lot of things that they need to fix, and it'll be interesting to see how they do it. But the first question they have to answer is this roster a roster that can do that? And does Chris Jones make it a roster that gives them the ability to do that? Because I would argue, as much as I love Chris Jones, he isn't the player that he was 2 or 3 years ago. We haven't seen that for a little bit, and they don't have anybody else. And the problem with him not being the same player he was 2 or 3 years ago is if they don't have anybody else, he can't do it by himself. He used to be able to do some of it by himself. He can't now.
And that's been the starkest difference, is when he is the only viable option, what it looks like there. Now, there are other hurdles we're going to get to, including what those cap numbers mean, who might have cash, et cetera. That's coming up later. But first, we got to get down to who could be interested, who needs or wants to really enhance their defensive line. Well, there's 2 guys that know him very well in Chicago and Tennessee, and that's where my money's on.
New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at messier parts of how we run our businesses and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo. the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's QUO.com/lockedonnfl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers.
Hey guys, the draft picks are in. They're set for so many teams. They're looking for a franchise quarterback. If you ever wish to become a QB yourself, getting drafted first overall by the Chiefs, or like this year, the actual Raiders, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you. Ultimate QB football legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of #1 draft pick. It's your job to lead your team to greatness. The #1 career mode game on mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment for a full career control. You sign contracts, train, upgrade yourself, build chemistry, and evolve with your teammates. Give input to your GM on roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise up the ranks to become a pro football legend. Ultimate QB is totally free. There's no ads. It works 100% offline. Perfect for you want to sneak a quick game in or two on the go. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search Ultimate QB in your favorite app store. We've got something special for you guys. Use the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store, and you'll get a free boost to start your career at Ultimate QB, the football legend. QB1, it's your legacy. Now, make sure you check out KC Chiefs Corner, NFL 33 and RGR Football for more about what's going on with Kansas City and the rest of the league as well. Now, when you come down to, you got to have two to tango, who could be interested in an asset like Chris Jones, even at his age. And stop me if you've heard these team names before. Raiders, Jets, Panthers, all teams that could use some of that. Surprisingly, the Panthers are the ones that actually have fallen farther down the draft board because of their performance this season. I would not have guessed that had you asked me. I think they are currently slated, as I double check that here, for a pick that in the middle of the round at 19, I mean, if that's even a little bit lower than middle of the round, that you could see them not having the ability to get what they need with that pick as well. Those are all possibilities. I wouldn't like to see Chris Jones land in any of those places. He will not be traded to the Raiders. We know that. But Jets, Carolina, I wouldn't like that. But he could go to two guys who know him well, in Ryan Poles and Mike Borgonzi. And I think both are compelling cases. And I want to ask you about Tennessee, but I want to make the case for Chicago. And I like the concept there. If you watch their wild card game, you see that their D-line is very much involved. And Sweat is certainly a player that could be a nice bookend to Chris Jones. Grady Jarrett is actually performing pretty well, but he's actually older than Chris Jones. So I don't know how long that contract's going to be viable where they want to keep him. I think if I know Ryan Poles, if this is working where you can get pass rush up front, I think he could be very interested. They do run a 4-man front currently. And I do think that this is a team that has enough that they need to double down on getting Caleb Williams as much support as possible. I think that could be a fit for Chris Jones.
Maybe. The Bears are already going to have to do some contract work. They're over $1.5 million over the salary cap as it is right now. So they'd have to do a lot of salary cap work to make that work. And one of the things that we would have to talk about when we start talking about this, and this is going to be something we'll dive into a little bit more with the trade hurdles, is Jones. You're going to have to make some kind of cash payments and bring his salary cap number down. I mean, the reality of his contract is you can potentially trade him because his base salary is $19 million in 2026. And he's got a roster bonus of $16 million. So the reality is and his roster bonus is due March 13th, I believe. And so the question becomes, if they pay the roster bonus of $16 million, are they willing to trade him? And then the cap million for said team would be 19. I mean,
Right.
that's a doable salary for a player of Jones's caliber, and it makes it a little bit more tradable. So Chicago could work, but like I said, you're going to have to make some salary cap questions work. Now, the one that makes a lot of sense that you brought up earlier was the Tennessee Titans, who currently have almost $97 million in cap space, and they're sitting there with potentially a brand new head coach. You have to wonder if Tennessee vaults to the top of the teams that could be interested in a guy like Chris Jones if they get one of the Chiefs coaches that they are supposedly interviewing in Nagy and Spags.
Right. And this figures into what could be a very hardcore full court press from Mike Borgonzi to bring as much of the culture and the players and the coaches that he can get from Kansas City to Tennessee. If I were him, that would be one of my mantras. And it does make sense. Now, currently they play a 3-man front with Simmons being one of the defensive tackles. With no head coach in place, there's no guarantee that they stick with that system. And I do think that you could get by in either drafting, retooling through free agency some of the outer players if you went to a 4-man front to get edges. With Simmons and Chris Jones as your 2 pass rushing defensive tackles, look out. If you want to support Cam Ward, you want to help that rookie stay upright and be able to play and get a lead, I can think of no better way than putting those 2 guys together on a defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, think about putting those 2 together, and it almost doesn't matter. It almost isn't going to matter who your defensive end is going to be because they're going to get they're going to be singly blocked because you can't figure that they're going to not double team Chris Jones or Jeff Simmons or both of them if they can figure out a way to double team both of them. And then you get a defensive end that could be going up against the tight end or, lots of different scenarios that you could go in there. And I do agree with you. They do play a 3-man front. So the big question is do they make it change? It depends on who the head coach is going to be. Until we know that, we're not going to have a clue as to who what their defensive line is going to do and if they're going to be a 3-4 or 4-3. I think you can make an argument that they could go either direction, and from a monetary standpoint, it makes a ton of sense to go with Chris Jones because, again, the other thing that you're looking at if you put those 2 players together on the same defensive line is while you may take a little bit of a hit in the running game, getting interior pressure on just about any QB is going to be a guarantee. Jones makes offensive linemen look silly at times, and he is going to get the chance to make even more offensive linemen look silly if he's next to Jeffrey Simmons for an entire season.
Yeah, and you got to think that the guys like Olufemi can probably do either. You have other guys who can come in and play like a true 4-3 defensive end type role. I think it's a possibility. And we know that connections make deals in this league, but nothing's super easy. There are a number of hurdles out there, and getting past the cap is just one of them. What could throw a monkey wrench in this deal? And should they do it? What we think, I actually don't want to see Chris go, but if this is what happens, this is what it'll look like coming up next. As the new year gets going and a lot of people try to simplify their routines, dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. And that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes and actually tastes great. They're rated #1 by the users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. There are 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or even quick lunches. Over 30 options a week for including family-sized meals as well as some of the smaller, quicker options for your dietary choices. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off of your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off of your first box, plus free shipping, plus free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
If you've ever hired somebody who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I need to hire someone for this show, I go straight to Indeed to be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners to the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Lot coming as we get ready for what could be some changes coming to Kansas City. Don't miss tomorrow when we're going to talk about Trent McDuffie and what that secondary is going to look like. Do not miss that. It's the other side of this coin, and that is what a trade would mean. I'm not sure that they could even pull this off, but one of the reasons that we talk about a couple of teams in particular, Bears and Titans today, is because of cap space. The other reason that you got to be important here is about value in what you can get in return. And I think trying to trade Chris Jones for a top 3 pick or top 4 pick, whatever they're sitting at this point, is a bit outlandish, to be honest. But I think it opens up all kinds of possibilities for trade downs, moving around the board. As we know, Dante Moore is now not going to come out for the NFL draft, which means there's one less quarterback at the top of the draft to help the Chiefs get players that they need at 9. I think that makes it more likely the Chiefs are ready to move around. And if you had to move Chris Jones and combine it with a trade swap, a trade move of picks, I think that is something that could get over the hurdle of not getting the right value compensatorily from another team looking to get his services.
This is real interesting to me because you start looking at value, you start looking at what you could get for Chris Jones, and that is going to be the big question. And it goes back to kind of what we talked about the last segment. More specifically, how much of the bonus are you willing to pay if you're going to trade Chris Jones, and what is his cap number going to be? Because I would make an argument that if you really want to trade Chris Jones, what you want to do is probably have him do a reworked deal, have him get a $20 million or more bonus and drop his salary by another $4 or $5 or $6 million, and then he becomes insanely tradable, and you're going to get way more value out of that than you would trading him at his current value of what would be like 19, assuming they don't do it before the league year starts when the bonus kicks in. Now, when you're looking at how this is going to work out for the Chiefs, they're going to lose cap space. They're going to have some dead money that they have to take on. All that makes sense. But the other part of this, and this is also going to be something that we're going to have to talk about when we get to talking about Trent McDuffie tomorrow, is you have to look at this and you have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, we know where we are in 2026. What do we think the realistic chance is that Mahomes is ready to play week 1? What's the realistic chance he's ready to play week 8? And what are the chances that we think we can make it to the playoffs? Mm-hmm. Because if he can make it to if you can make it to the playoffs, it doesn't matter if you're the 7th seed. If you make it to the playoffs, Mahomes is going to be healthy enough, I would assume, based on just the normal time frame of the injury, he will be healthy enough to compete in the playoffs. But that's the big question. If you don't think he's going to be back for that, you have to look at your roster building differently than if you think he will. Because while we want to have them go back to a Super Bowl and not waste a year of Mahomes, which I 100% agree with, you have to be smart about what you're going to do. If you know, or if you think and you have a pretty good idea that there's no way he's going to be making it back until week 10, week 11, which we have no idea of anything right now. Patrick Mahomes, I guarantee you the Chiefs have some sort of idea where they think he is compared to where they expected him to be. And they have a time frame. You have to determine what you're going to do with your roster based on that, because regardless of who starts for QB or starts QB week 1, if you're not going to be competitive, trading Chris Jones and paying a little bit more money now to get it off the books so you can really go all in and do stuff in 2027 makes a ton of sense. That is where it really is going, what it's really going to come down to. If you want to compete in 2026 and you want to try to run it back in 2026 for another Super Bowl, I don't think you can trade Chris Jones. The only way you can trade Chris Jones is if you're going to get a high first-round pick and probably a third-round pick. Because the reality is you're going to need to probably take both of those picks and invest them in defensive line that can get after the quarterback and do half of what Chris Jones has done, if not a little bit more, with those two players. Because you still have to rebuild that entire defensive line, regardless of what you do with Chris Jones.
Yeah, and when you make that move, you are effectively dismantling your pass rush completely. And I agree with you there. So that brings to the question, though, like you said, a high first-round pick. What is Chris Jones worth in terms of a singular first-round pick? I believe he's worth a first-round pick. That and something as additional compensation. I don't think he's, at this point, at his age, worth number 4 overall.
No. I wouldn't say he's worth number 4. It's really hard to tell you where you would rank him. Is he worth number 4 for the Titans? No. But then you get into, okay, would you take the Titans' second-round pick and more? I mean, there's lots of different ways to go with it.
I agree. It would have to be a lot more for me. But the other team that we talked about, the Bears, are falling down the draft chart here, right? Because they found a way to win. They're currently slated for number 25. Chris Jones is easily worth that, in my opinion. Plus some.
Okay. Well, I don't disagree with you on that at all. The question becomes, what do you do with his cap number? Because if you trade him pre-June 1st, which is what they would have to do to be able to do anything in free agency, it will free up $15.6 million. Still has a dead money hit of almost $30 million, but it frees up $16 million. Now, I hate saying it this way because well, let me just go look really quick since we're here. What players were on the Chiefs that you could get for 2 of those contracts for $15 million? I mean, that would have paid basically for Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, their first deals in the new year, but that's not really something that you can count on. Is it going to get you enough to re-sign a guy like Leo Chenal if you want him back? Yes. Is it going to get you? Actually, here's my 2 right now: Trent McDuffie and Leo Chenal. If you just had Trent McDuffie play on his contract, which we'll talk more about tomorrow, it's $13.6 million. I think you could get close to using Chris Jones's money to have Trent McDuffie paid for and bring back Leo Chenal and still be about even when you start talking about it that way, before you even talk about the draft picks that you're going to get in return.
Right. And they're 2 different forms of compensation, but it all goes into the same thing. So, folks, we're going to get into Trent McDuffie as well as some of his secondary teammates tomorrow about some of these scenarios as well. So don't miss that. But bottom line, before we go, Chris, do you think they should do this or not, if they do have interest?
It's so hard. I've loved Chris Jones since he started playing for Kansas City. I think he's a fantastic player. I do think that he's getting on the wrong side of his career, and his production is probably going to be even worse in 2026, or at least on par with 2025. So I would consider it. I would hate it, but I would consider it. This goes back to what I kind of said earlier. Do you want to be a dynasty? Because the reality is that he's not going to be worth the $30 million that you're paying him, at least the $30 million. And yeah, his cap number's 45 right now. They're going to have to adjust it regardless. I can't imagine they want to get it much beyond 30, because if you do that, you're just screwing yourself in future years. Like, there's only so much you can do of that. So to me, I would probably consider it, especially if you think Mahomes is going to miss half the season. If he's going to miss half the season, this is the perfect opportunity to start anew in multiple different facets and do a reset on your roster and get to a point where maybe you don't go out and sign a bunch of guys this year. Maybe you go draft and you draft, you try to get the best players you possibly can in the draft, and you maybe trade some draft picks from next year to get more guys this year. Although I know this isn't the best draft for that, but the point is you get the guys in, you get them experience, you get them ready to where you think they're going to be able to more compete in 2027. And then you can have money to spend in free agency in 2027 to add pieces to try to compete and go back to the Super Bowl in 2027. It really just depends on what you think Mahomes is going to be able to do. The other side of this is if you trade Chris Jones, that's money for Travis Kelsey if Travis Kelsey's coming back. But again, I started saying this at the beginning of the show. Mahomes, Kelsey, and Jones, it's all possible that none of them are playing week 1.
That's going to be tough. This is a nightmare scenario. I, at this point, would rather see them work with the contract than trade it myself. We don't know, but we know there will be interest, at least some. So that's where we're at on Chris Jones. What do you guys think? Leave your comments down below. I'd really like to hear. There's a lot of back and forth on this in Chiefs Kingdom right now, and I would like to see what the majority is. Tomorrow, we will run down Trent McDuffie and his secondary crew. You can't talk about Trent McDuffie without talking about the other 4 guys in his draft class. So we will cover that as well. Please don't miss that. That's also going to be a very important piece of this offseason. Thank you for your time today. We very much appreciate it. Check out all of our sites and everything that's going on because it's a busy time of year. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.